So, this is a case of extrapolation from the intraspecies changes to intraspecies. They're extrapolating this concept without any evidence. And if you've ever, done charts like every year, it's interesting because with numbers and statistics and extrapolation, a lot of times you can kind of make things go the way you want it to go. If you're wanting to build a model of increasing, you'll pick those data points that will show, and you'll selectively pull stuff out. It's interesting because, like a lot of times at work, people ask me to pull numbers for some presentation. And it's amazing how greatly different those numbers can be by just one little change. It's like, oh, okay, I forgot, they look at this and it's like, well, that's not what I expected. It's like, oh, okay, I forgot to do this. Let me change this. It's like, whoa, the graph changes totally. It's like, well, that's not quite it either. And so just by changing little, you're basically looking at slightly different data points, excluding some or highlighting others. And extrapolation is really dangerous. And that's what's happened in the whole Darwinian debate. And the question is, well, wait a second. Why would scientists do that? Right? Because aren't scientists looking for truth no matter where the evidence leads?
Trying to get their research funded.
Trying to get the research funded. Right, and if your research shows something that's totally different, boy, you'll get ostracized, right? And so here's kind of a general statement I'm going to throw out there. And the reason is that evolution actually is a religion that is based on a materialistic presupposition. The scientists who are looking at these things have a presupposition that everything must be only defined by atoms and molecules. So by definition, there cannot be a God, because that's their philosophical presupposition. Now, is that something that you can prove scientifically? Can you prove scientifically that there is nothing except for matter? Can that be proven scientifically?
No.
Can you prove scientifically that there is a human spirit or there isn't a human spirit? Can you?
No.
No. You can't prove that because it's not measurable by touch. And you can't prove whether there's something external to this system or not, even if the evidence points there. Okay? So the point is, and I've got some great quotes here. Let me just pull one out. Could you find another book in here, Joe? Just use that. I don't know if you're familiar with Richard Dawkins. You may or may not be familiar with him. He is a he's a science popularizer, kind of like Carl Sagan. Yeah, anybody here familiar with the Cosmos series? Okay. Well, this guy, you know who Carl Sagan is? You ever heard of him? No?
Only heard the name. That's
Okay. Well, back when I was young, there was this TV series, and it was on PBS, and it was called Cosmos. And at the beginning of every one of his statements that would be there at the beginning of every episode was, the cosmos. It's all there is. It's all there ever was. It's all that there will ever be. Now, in that statement, it is making a materialistic philosophical claim that cannot be proven scientifically. They've come to a philosophical decision, and now from that decision, they're going to do their science. But they have a bias. And so here's this guy, Richard Dawkins, quite famous nowadays. He's kind of like the current day Carl Sagan. And he said, even if there were no actual evidence in favor of the Darwinian theory, we would still be justified in preferring it over all rival theories. So, even if there's no evidence, we would still be justified in preferring it above any other theory. And here's a statement that was published in the journal Nature by a Kansas State University professor. He says, even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, okay, this is during the intelligent design debate. He says, even if all the data points to an intelligent designer, such a hypothesis is excluded from science because it's not naturalistic. The statement is that there has to be, we can only consider things that have a materialist presupposition. And here's a quote from the the editor-in-chief of Scientific American during this debate. He says, a central tenet of modern science is methodological naturalism. It seeks to explain the universe purely in terms of observed or testable natural mechanisms. And others retorted back to that. It's like, well, since when is that a central tenet? Who made up that rule? I don't remember voting for it. So the basic presupposition is actually a philosophical presupposition. Philosophy equals belief equals not science equals religion. Okay? Here's a statement by what is his name? Richard Lewontin, who is, what is he? He's like a Harvard biologist. He says, it's not that the methods and institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation. So he said, science doesn't compel us to accept a material explanation. On the contrary, he says, we are forced by our a priori adherence to material causes, to create an apparatus of investigation, a set of concepts that produce material explanations. So he said the scientific method doesn't force us to have this presupposition. We have this presupposition. We're going at this because that is our beginning philosophical fundamental viewpoint. Okay? So the fact is that the claim that all that there is just as much a faith claim as the claim that there is a God. They can no more prove that there is nothing except material. They cannot prove that any more than I can prove, well, actually I can probably prove better. I can prove better that there is a God because of Jesus Christ. They have nothing to base that argument off of. It is a philosophical presupposition. Okay? All science that we face flows from that. Okay, so when we're looking at this whole topic of Darwinism, I think there's two things that we need to be able to do. One is show the major flaws in the Darwinian viewpoint. Second, we need to show compelling evidence for there being intelligent design, which is some external intelligence outside of the universe that totally is against what, like Carl Sagan would say, that this universe is all that there is. There is nothing outside of it. There is no creator. So, let me ask you, because now you've claimed, I've heard the claim, that there's no evidence for species, intraspecies evolution, the change from one species to another. So I want you to give me some evidence that would start putting some cracks in that gigantic wall known as evolution. That is a foundation that many people's lives are built on, and so much are they bought into it that they fake things. Okay? Like the moths. And there's a whole bunch of other things that we can go through. I'll see what you can come up with. So what are some of the flaws of Darwinian evolution? Some things, evidence that totally points away from it. Jason.